Threads of Hope. C. S. Larson. Threads of Hope. A Yarnspinner's Dream. C. S. Larson. I wrote or hallucinated this, sometimes I'm not sure, when my 6-month-old son napped during the day or after he woke me up countless times at night. Turns out you can actually write a short story on your mobile phone. How cool is that? Contents. Title page. Introduction. Chapter 1. Chapter 2. Chapter 3. Chapter 4. Chapter 5. Chapter 6. Chapter 7. Introduction. The world is a crazy place, so grab a beverage, sit back and wrap yourself in a cozy fantasy, feel-good short story. This story is dedicated to all the creatives out there. Whether you read, knit, crochet, or something entirely different, this is for you. Threads of Hope, a yarn spinner's dream. A short-ish story. Prequel to Stitchin' Up Trouble, the epic yarn showdown. Chapter 1. "Hang on, I'm coming," I hollered, trying to make my way through the patrons. It was a full house. The inn was packed tonight, which, of course, meant more work for me and less time for knitting. I sighed and held the drinks a little closer to my chest. Winding and weaving through the crowd, I reached my destination without spilling as much as one drop from the 4 mugs of mead the patrons had asked for. As I started putting them down, someone bumped into me from behind, knocking one mug out of my hand and the content on the grimy, dirty stone floor, making it even more slippery. "Damn it!" I gritted my teeth, looked up and smiled at the newly arrived patrons. "I'm so sorry, I'll get you another one right away," I said, and turned to head back through the crowd to the bar, careful not to slip on the newly spilled mead. My feet would soon stick to the floor even more, making it harder to rush the drinks orders as the night progressed. Crap, Boss would not be happy about me spilling his mead. I'd have to pay for this one myself, and I'd have to make sure he didn't see me pouring another draft without also putting money in the till. "Miss, it's okay." The patron grabbed me by the wrist, sensing my frustration. "It wasn't your fault you got bumped." "I'll send Payne to the bar to get another drink," he loudly declared, while my boss, ironically also named Boss, glanced my way from the back of the room, sending shivers down my spine and raising the small hairs on my arms. As I said, I'm pretty sure Payne was the one who spilled his drink. "Ain't that right, Payne?" the patron said, a heavy accent muffling his words a bit. Salt and pepper hair donned the top of his head and was poking in all possible directions. He was smiling gently at me and padding Payne on his back. He had a calm aura about him, and he had clearly picked up on the mild panic that was settling in my stomach and showing on my skin. My shoulders dropped, and I hunched. "Thank you, sir," I said quietly. "You have no idea how much that means to me." "Not a problem at all, miss." He raised an inquisitive eyebrow. "Payne," I said. "I'm just Payne." "Well, all right then. It was my pleasure, Miss Payne. Your boss is giving me the heebie-jeebies with his big mouth full of absolutely, well, not teeth, that's for sure. You look like you needed an out, and I'm just glad to help." He smiled at me again and put his hand out. "I'm Ratchet, by the way. Me and the boys are just passing through here. We're on our way back to Silver Forest." He pointed towards one of the windows at the front, as if I'd know which way Silver Forest lay. I didn't. Being born and raised in this town, and never having left, I didn't know what lay beyond the town's borders. I wanted to know, though. I wanted to leave this godforsaken place and Boss. Most of all, I wanted to get away from him. Often, I dreamt of walking away in the sunshine with a smile on my face, never to come back to this god-awful inn. Payne slid out from the bench, and I moved to accommodate him passing me. He smiled and turned. As he started towards the bar, I turned again to the patron, to Ratchet. "I've never been outside Millstone," I mumbled. "I've always—" "Payne!" a voice bellowed from another part of the inn. Boss had noticed that I was still at the same table. He was coming straight for me now, powering through the busy crowd like a runaway carriage pulled by a frightened horse. Steam was coming off him from the heat of the crowd, making him look like he might combust. He had a sickeningly furious look on his face. I froze completely and broke out in a cold sweat, willing. My feet to move, to run, to do anything. They betrayed me, and I just stood there like a pillar of salt staring stupidly at the hell coming my way. Who does that anyway? Who just stands there and accepts their fate, even when that fate makes you wish death would find you quickly? This was going to hurt. I was sure of it. Boss had a way of turning very nasty when he decided I needed to be punished, which was very often these days. I had the scars to prove it. He was taking full advantage of the fact that I was paying off a debt, thus leaving me with few options to fight back. Skidding to a halt in front of me, Boss blew out a breath in my face. The reek of it almost made me gag. I swallowed hard and put my head down. Staring at the dirty floor, I hoped he would be gentle with his punishment. Still, I braced myself and balled my hands into tight fists. Please aim for the face and not my hands, I thought. Boss turned towards the patrons. Gentlemen, he boomed, sending a partially toothless, disgusting smile their way before he turned to me again. I remained frozen, but Ratchet had moved closer to the edge of the table and closer to me. Shivering, I turned my gaze up to meet Boss. I dot. I'm sore. Sorry, I stammered. Look, Ratchet interjected and stood up next to me. He took a small step forward, putting me behind him and making Boss back up a step. I'd never seen anyone challenge Boss that way before, but Ratchet stood his ground, radiating confidence. Your very competent young lady here was just giving me and the lads some sightseeing tips for the town. We're passing through and figured we wanted to see the old mill. She really is very knowledgeable, and her service is impeccable. He beamed at me first, then threw Boss a "Don't test me, man. Look." Boss, clearly taken aback, turned to me, his face beetroot red, and puffed himself up. Well, unless they're paying you by the hour like me, then you'd best get back to work if you know what's good for you, he sneered, and then pushed me hard in the back to get me moving. He raced past me, steam still coming off him, and disappeared into the kitchen. I stumbled and fell forward. Ratchet grabbed me and pulled me up. He leaned in gently. Young lady, you should get out of this establishment. That boss of yours is a no-do-gooder, as sure as anyone I've ever seen, he muttered. I know, but I can't, I whispered, trying to rise so I could get moving and avoid Boss's wrath and humiliation. But Ratchet held firm and looked me straight in the eyes. Why not? He asked, louder now, urgency lining his voice. He also knew that Boss would come for me if I didn't get going. I tried to pull loose again, but he tightened his grip. You have a choice, he said, and then his voice turned sad. I also have a daughter, and I wasn't the father I was supposed to be. However, if anyone treated her the way your boss treats you, he wouldn't live to see the next sundown. So again I urge you, get out of here. Tears burned my eyes, threatening to burst the dam holding them back. I had spent many moons trying to toughen up myself in order to survive this ordeal, and I felt like I had been successful until I met Ratchet. He saw straight through me and tore down my defenses. I can't leave, I just can't. I gritted my teeth and tore myself away from his grip and started making my way to the bar, quickly slipping and sliding on the grimy floor. Patrons were shouting orders at me left and right. I just wanted this night to be over. Grabbing onto my knitting needles in my pocket, I anchored myself and started counting down the time for the inn to close for the night. Chapter 2. Closing the door, kicking off my shoes, I fell down on my bed, exhausted. What a day. I'd been on my feet since before dawn, and it was now well after midnight. I reached into my pocket, picking up my needles again. My sock was nearing completion. All I had left was half of the foot, and then the toe. I'd finished the gusset earlier with the few rounds of knitting I had gotten done while running to the pantry to get another keg of mead. I got my rounds in whenever I could manage, even sometimes when I was on the loo. It wasn't dignified, but hey, knitters are going to knit. I don't remember a time when knitting wasn't a big part of my life. The yarn was soft, even though it was wool. I loved the feel of it sliding through my fingers when knitting. I had a small stash that I'd hidden away in my room. I kept adding to it whenever I could. Sheep herders would sometimes pass through Millstone in the spring when they were moving their flock. Outside the inn, a small pen held the sheep while the sheep herders ate and drank inside. Whatever wool they left behind, I'd pick up and stash it away for later treatment. That's how I could keep my knitting alive. Sitting up, I stretched and decided to just knit a few more rounds before going to sleep. I needed to sleep badly, but I never had any time to devote to just knitting anymore, not after Boss decided to punish me by making me work from sunup till sundown. He'd caught me taking a small knitting break some nights ago and had yanked the yarn out of my hands and thrown it out into the rainy night while yelling at me that I needed to work harder and longer from now on. I had saved my yarn, but it had cost me a sleepless night, gingerly trying to wash the mud out of it. Boss had laughed at me when I was on my knees in the mud, picking up needles, stitch markers and my yarn. Showing it back in my pocket, I stormed back into the inn to continue working, soaked and freezing. Boss's creepy laugh following my footsteps. I really hated working for him, and I hated having to work for him. I didn't have a choice, though. The people who said you always had a choice clearly had not tried being poor. I wondered if Ratchet had ever tasted the bitterness of poverty, the way he had spoken to me. I deemed it unlikely. His urging me to leave echoed in my head. I brushed off his words and drew my cover tighter around me. Poverty removes most. Choices leaving you with none or only bad ones. This one was both a non-choice and a sucky one at that. I was working for Boss because I had to pay off my mum's debt to ensure her safety. It was a lousy non-choice, but one I'd make again in a heartbeat if it meant keeping my mum safe. She was my only family after all. My countdown on the wall caught my eye. Only 3 full moons remained before I could walk away from this hellhole. Determined to see them through, I persevered, despite the back-breaking work and daily humiliation. I knew that if I quit, Boss would come after my mum. My only prayer after this ordeal was for healthy hands, so I could knit and pursue my dream. I didn't know where I'd go, but that was okay. I'd figure it out. Anywhere but Millstone would do me fine. Maybe I could even search for my mum. Thinking about her always cut like a knife, and I took a deep breath to not get too choked up and started my stockinette stitches again. Even after so many years of knitting, this was still the most beautiful type of stitch to me. Also the most simple one. There was beauty in simplicity. My hands working in perfect rhythm by themselves, I drifted back into the realm of memories. I didn't even know where my mum was. We'd lived in a tiny cabin in the woods, mostly minding our own business. Just me and her. We had little in the way of physical possessions, but we grew our own food and chopped our own firewood. It was a hard but good life. My mum had taught me to knit and sew as soon as I was old enough to firmly grip my own needles and avoid unintentionally stabbing myself every other stitch. I never went to school. We didn't have the coin to send me. Instead, I helped my mum with her sewing business, and I loved it. I got to spend every minute of the day with her and learn from her. I used to call us the 2 sewer ladies, not realizing how disgusting it was back then. To me, it made all the sense in the world, and my mum was kind enough not to correct me. She was kind and good to everyone, and that's what got her in trouble with Boss. Also, we were poor, so turning down work didn't happen very often. Boss had come to her with a jacket in need of some alteration. It was about 20 sizes too small for his fat belly. He offered good money, and she accepted and took his measurements. This is where everything went absolutely to hell for the first time. When Boss came. Back 1 moon later, the jacket didn't fit. He'd gotten even bigger, and so, of course, it wouldn't fit his circumference. I doubted anything in the world could envelop this guy and keep the rest of us from seeing his very unsightly stomach. Boss couldn't button up the jacket without several of the buttons exploding off it and onto the floor. One of his goons let out a small laugh and Boss went absolutely crazy. He whirled on my mum, fury emanating off him, and he pushed her against the wall. He shouted her down until she was on her knees crying. I had tried going between them to peel him off her, but he swatted me away like an insect, and his goons grabbed my arms, keeping me still. In hindsight, fighting them had been completely stupid. They were big brutes, and I was small and thin and gangly, but I tried anyway. I had a habit of picking fights I knew I would lose. I made a mental note to myself to change that habit. Right now, though, it seemed I had picked yet another one working for Boss. Boss angrily threw the jacket back in Mum's face and told her in no uncertain terms that she now owed him because she had ruined the very expensive jacket. He wheeled around and barged back out the door with his goons in tow, disappearing into the night. I had picked up my mum, and we had a good cry, both now fearing for our future. A few moons passed, however, and no one had come to collect the unspecified debt, so we breathed a little easier, Mum and me. I had even stopped creeping through the house at night and peeking out into the darkness, which was good, because more than once I had surprised a deer staring back through the window, and we had both jumped 10 feet in the air, me onto the sofa and toppling it over, and the deer directly into our herb garden, thrashing our chives. It was the middle of the night when it happened. A rustling outside the house woke me up, something that didn't sound like any of the wildlife we would normally encounter near the house, and it didn't sound like the wind either. My insides became liquid with fear. I woke up my mum, grabbed her hand, and led her to the back door. "They're coming," I whispered. "Mum, I need you to run and not look back," I told her before giving her a quick but firm hug. I opened the door as quietly as I could and gave her a hard shove and told her to run. She'd refused, obviously pleading with me to let them take her instead. Age was catching up with her, though, and I knew it would be the death of her if Boss took her away, so I slammed the back door in her face, hoping like hell Boss's goons had not gone round the back of the house. I ran to the front door just as someone kicked it in. Splinters flew, and the door went flying back into the room still attached to the hinges. Throwing myself onto the sofa, I missed it by an inch. I scrambled to get up, but an enormous foot pushed me down hard. Well, 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 who have we here? A colossal head peered down at me. It was attached to a thick neck, big shoulders, and an immense belly that was kept in place by a struggling belt buckle. A few more pounds and it would surely give out. Boss had come to collect. Pulling me up like I weighed nothing, he held me by the scruff of my neck. My feet dangling in the air, I held onto his arm, flailing above ground. "Where's your mum?" he spat. "She's not home. I don't know where she is," I stammered, my collar getting tighter, leaving me gasping for air. "She owes me for the jacket she ruined, and I'm here to get what's mine." His hard, unforgiving eyes burned into mine, leaving me with a feeling of complete hopelessness. "If she can't pay up..." Boss let the sentence linger and threw me on the floor. In the end, I had gone through with my plan and offered myself up to pay the debt off. He had thrown me in his cart and set off. And now here I was, stuck in a dingy, worn-down, creepy inn, paying off my mum's debt. Whatever coin I had accumulated, I had gotten from the tips of kind patrons. I had them stowed in a small secret pocket in my bodice, and in a small pouch I had stuffed inside a skein of yarn. After paying off the debt, I knew exactly how I would spend my hard-earned coin. Shit. I leaned towards the little shelf above my even smaller bed and reached for the crochet hook to pick up the stitches I just dropped. Looking out the window, the sun was slowly rising on the horizon. Bugger. I had done it again, lost track of time. It always happened when I was knitting. Putting my sock down, I crept underneath the blanket to get at least a little sleep before Boss would come banging on the door to get me up. Another day in this hellhole was about to begin. I turned in bed and faced the wall, shutting my eyes hard and willing myself to sleep. Come on, Payne, one day at a time. You can do it. Chapter 3. "Hey! Can I get some service around here?" A determined female voice shouted from the bar. Quickly stuffing my knitting back into my pocket, I ran like the wind towards the kitchen to get to her before she opened her mouth again and alerted Boss to the fact that I was not where I should be. I carefully made my way through the kitchen, trying to make as little noise as possible. I was almost at the bar when, "Hey, I'm a paying customer. Do you hate money, Boss?" the voice shouted again, only louder this time. "Shah! Please." "Not so loud," I whispered as I rounded the doorway to the bar, grabbing onto it. Hands on the counter and trying to keep myself from shaking too badly, thinking about the consequences if she would tell on me to Boss, I looked up into the eyes of a woman my age. She was eyeing me with an admirable determination, like nothing could get her down. She stood tall and held herself with poise. I rose from the counter and brushed myself off, trying not to look as miserable as I felt. I had gotten 3 rounds of knitting in at the loo. That was something. My sock was almost done. I was proud of myself for actually finishing a pair of socks. It had been ages since I had finished any type of knitting project. "What can I get you?" I asked cheerily, well as cheerily as I could muster, and plastered a fake smile on my face. Looking past her, I saw Boss steering towards the inn from outside and panicked. Oh no, he knew! I bet he had heard the woman shouting. Bile rose in my throat and a sick feeling came over me. "Please make your order quickly," I screeched. "We are a busy inn, as you can see." I made a sweep of my hand, showing her the completely empty inn. I hadn't noticed the dead silence in the inn because I'd been so busy returning to the bar. No one occupied a single table. The inn was empty, and the smell of stale mead permeated everything. My face went beetroot red in an instant. I guess lunch rush is over. It's really normally quite full this time of day, I murmured, rubbing my hands together to calm myself down. "I'm sure you are. I'll just have some water, thanks." The woman smiled overbearingly at me. "Water, right, yes, coming right up." My smile faltered as Boss came dangerously close to the front door. I had to get this woman her water and put my apron on fast as hell so he wouldn't find out I had been missing. The door opened and I quickly ducked behind the bar, as if I was taking part in a crazy game of hide and seek, frantically searching for my apron. I usually put it right below the till. Where was it? Heavy footsteps approached the bar. Sweating profusely now, I gave up on finding the apron. My dress would have to do, and I would take the scolding from Boss. Rising, something caught my eye underneath a stack of tea towels. My apron! I quickly grabbed it and put it on as I stood back up, making sure my smile was still in place. A glass of water stood in front of the woman. "Don't worry, I won't tell Boss," she smiled and winked at me. Flabbergasted, I just nodded. "I've heard you're not being treated well here," she continued. "I know, Boss, and I'm not surprised." Her eyes bore into me and my cheeks flushed instantly. "Well, I guess I can't complain. I've got a place to stay and work to do," I muttered, trying and failing to keep my smile up. "Oh, right, yeah. You mean you're living in that dingy little room at the top of the stairs? The one with the holes in the roof and the leak by the window? Yeah, I'm sure those accommodations are great," she huffed. "Well, it's not that bad," I tried. "It is exactly that bad, and moreover, Boss doesn't deserve any female employees. Haven't you ever wondered why you're the only one?" Yeah, I'll tell you why. He doesn't know how to treat people, let alone women, with respect. He's a complete half-wit," she huffed, and I smiled involuntarily. "Is that so?" Boss's voice rang out behind the woman, and I flinched. "Don't you know how to mind your own business?" Boss continued. "We don't want you here." The woman winked at me warmly, then she turned slowly to face Boss. Her face was stone and her eyes were cold as ice. The pleasant woman she had been a moment before had given way to a figure of authority. "Boss," she started in a condescending tone of voice, "I'm a regular patron like anyone else, and as such, I have a right to be here." "Would you refuse other paying customers?" she inquired sternly. She had him there. Boss loved coin more than anything and never turned anyone away. He scowled as he rounded her to come and stand between the bar and the woman. "That'll be 1 gold coin," he uttered with a low growl. "For a glass of water?" she asked with mock surprise. "This inn must surely be in dire need of coin, seeing as you cannot seem to price your beverages correctly." Boss took a step towards her and puffed himself up menacingly. 1 gold coin, he growled again. She stared him down hard, but made no move to dig into her pockets for the coin. "If you don't pay up right now, I'll have to punish the waitress that served you the water. I cannot have my staff handing out free beverages to hysterical women." Boss's voice was loud and booming now. He had raised himself to his full height and turned towards me. My knees almost buckled and I went pale white. Grabbing onto the bar to keep myself standing, I swallowed hard and prepared myself for the slap that would surely follow his threat. "Oh, hold your horses, you silly man," the woman interjected. "I have your coin right here, you robbing bastard." She fished out a coin from her purse and slid it across the bar to me. "There you go," she said with a sweet smile. "Thank you for your excellent service. I'm sorry I cannot say the same for your boss." I relaxed a tiny bit and reached over to put the coin in the till, but Boss snatched it up and pocketed it in his dirty breeches, sending me a mean scowl that made me cower again. "Hey!" She locked eyes with me and said, "Stand tall and don't let him push you around." She winked at me again. Boss took another menacing step forward. The woman turned on her stool and jumped down elegantly while pointing a finger at Boss. "Like I said, half-wit," she shrugged. "I'm Meesa, by the way, and you, Payne, should get out of this establishment." She turned and strolled leisurely towards the door. I watched, mesmerized, as she closed the door behind her and disappeared out of the inn and, quite possibly, my life. Her words rang in my head. This was the second patron who had told me I should leave, and also, how did she know my name? I was torn violently from my thoughts a second later. "Get back to work!" Boss shouted as he pushed me and stormed past into the kitchen. A loud bang came, followed by a string of swear words from Boss. Poor Channy, he was going to get another earful for forgetting to put the big pot back after he cleaned it. Boss had probably stepped right into it and fallen over. I had a sneaky feeling that Channy sometimes misplaced pots on purpose. He hated it here too. Meesa was right. Boss really was a half-wit. I smiled involuntarily again. Chapter 4. "I thought I'd told you to stay away from those patrons," Boss shouted. The inn was quiet after the lunch rush had finished, and I was wiping down tabletops when he snuck up behind me and slapped me just as I turned. I stumbled back, my cheek burning from the closing counter with his fat fingers. I began, but he pushed me against the wall, hard. "Ouch!" Spit flew, and I closed my mouth to avoid at least the worst deluge. "You went back and served them another round?" he spat, his face beetroot red and his eyes bulging out of his head. "They asked for it," I whispered, trying to make myself as small as possible. A second strike was not above Boss. He enjoyed the power he had over me. "They didn't pay for that round. It set me back at least 12 coins, which means," he smiled wickedly, "that I will add 12 moons to your duty here. You will pay off your mother's debt and your own debt in 30 moons. Unless," he licked his lips, clearly enjoying my terror, "unless you mess up again, forcing me to add more time to your duty." He was right up in my face, his breath reeking of mead and old food. Bile rose in my throat and I clamped my teeth down and swallowed hard, failing to hide my horror. Boss's wicked smile burned into my memory as he pushed me hard against the wall one more time and left. My head was ringing, and the air around grew thick, suffocating me in the stale smell of the inn. My mouth was dry and I was speechless. 12 more moons added on. This place was going to be the death of me. I knew he wasn't punishing me for serving another round to a group of patrons. He was punishing me for talking to Meesa. It was clear he hated the woman. Whatever had happened between them at some point had left no love in his heart, that was for sure. In fact, I wasn't sure Boss could even feel love. The way he had so casually added to my punishment spoke volumes. Tears burned my eyes. "Get a grip on yourself, Payne," I whispered. And just in time. The door flew open and merry voices reached my ears. The dinner rush was about to start. A long night lay ahead of me as I staggered up to the bar and put on my apron. Boss let me go, but I knew he would catch up with me some other time and continue the abuse. With him, there was always a round two. Many inappropriate butt slaps and sordid offers later. I was finally dragging my feet up the stairs, done for the night. I really hated this place. I opened the door to my room and closed it gently behind me. Walking past my mirror, I stopped to look and realized that I didn't recognize myself anymore. The woman staring back at me was a haggard, hollow shell. I'd been vibrant and lively and stubborn before. Probably mostly stubborn, but vibrant and lively also sounded good, even though I suppose it was kind of the same thing. What had I allowed Boss to do to me? I was pretty sure even my mum wouldn't recognize the woman I had become. Shame and sorrow welled up inside me. I had to do something. Feeling sorry for myself and working myself to the bone was not getting me anywhere if Boss just kept on adding more moons to my time here. It slowly dawned on me that Boss was probably never going to let me go. He enjoyed treating me like his pet, like I was his property. Fury rose in the pit of my stomach and crept up into my heart in a way I had not felt in a long time. I was nobody's property. How could I even let myself think of myself like that? "What is wrong with you, Payne?" I scoffed, louder than intended. My mum had always taught me to be independent and strong and to not suffer fools lightly. She would surely give me a scolding if she knew I was under Boss's thumb. My cheeks flushed with anger. It kept building in my heart, and in an instant I knew. If I wanted out, I had to take matters into my own hands. Meesa was right. I should leave this establishment and the half-wit controlling my life. Chapter 5. The night was dark as a hole in the ground. I gingerly peeled my cover back and put my feet on the freezing floor, careful not to touch the creaking parts of the floorboards. This was it. I was going to make a run for it tonight. I had been preparing for it for the past half moon. Heart thumping, I reached for my small pouch containing my yarn and meagre belongings, along with the few rations I had stolen from the kitchen. I stood up. A board creaked beneath my foot and I froze. Taking silent, deep breaths, I got my heart rate back on track and took a step forward. Nothing. The floor was silent. Another step. I had a total of 5 small steps from the door to the bed in my room. Right now, the distance seemed like a mile. Would I make it without waking up, Boss? I could hear his snoring from across the hall. That had to be a sign that he was sleeping soundly, right? I ushered myself forward one more step. The door was 2 steps away now, but after that came the stairs. I had spent much time walking up and down them, trying to decide which path would make the least noise. The inn was old and weathered, and that meant that almost everything was noisy, be it an old chair or the stairs. You could always hear what was going on and where. One more step. I stilled again, listening for the snoring across the hall. It was still there. Phew. The door loomed in front of me, standing between me and the hall like a silent guardian. Last step. I made it. Now to tackle the stairs and the floor across the main room in the inn. Working my way down silently, I reached the bottom of the stairs. I released a breath I hadn't realized I had been holding and started crossing the main floor. I was so close to freedom now. So close. Sticking to the shadows, I quietly inched towards the door, careful to not let my pouch bang into either tables or chairs. A sliver of hope bloomed inside me as the door loomed closer. I could do this. I could make it. Freedom lay behind the big wooden door that marked the main entrance of the inn. It had been a long time since I had tasted freedom, and the thought was almost intoxicating. 10 more steps, just 10 more. Well, 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 I thought I heard someone sneaking around, a deep voice drawled behind me. Trying to run, are we? I whirled around, not caring about being silent anymore. Coming closer through the darkness, I could make out the outline of Boss in the shadows. It was unmistakable, the big belly spilling out to the sides and the rock-solid shoulders topped by the biggest head I'd ever seen. Fear gripped me and I froze mid-step. I hadn't heard him creep up behind me. He wasn't right behind me, but fairly close. He was good at sneaking around, apparently. Shit. Normally he would come barging through whatever door was in his way, happily ripping it off the hinges, and you could hear him a mile away. How had he gotten so sneaky? Suddenly, the moonlight was shining through the windows. Boss' shadow was coming closer. The door was so close. It was now or never. If I let Boss get any closer, I would never leave this place. I was sure of it. I took a deep breath and bolted for the door. Ripping it open, I sprinted over the cobblestoned path, away from the inn as fast as I could. My feet were bare, but I didn't care. The taste of freedom kept me going. I could hear Boss coming up behind me. He was fast. How the heck was he both sneaky and fast? He was wider than he was tall. He should be rolling and not running. Run, Payne, keep running and don't stop, I willed myself. Luckily, I was in good shape, the only good thing that had come out of working for Boss, who was still getting closer. Shit. 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 Running in a dress sucks, and I made a vow to never ever wear a dress again if I made it out of this forest alive. The forest was dense and the night was still pitch black despite the moonlight coming through the branches, but I kept going. Rain was pounding down hard, drenching me from head to toe. It felt like that world was caving in on me. I did not know where I would go at this point. I always thought that it didn't matter as long as I got away from Boss. You should have thought of that, Payne, I scolded myself. Look at you, all cold and soaked to the bone and nowhere to go. And in winter, no less. You should have escaped in the summer. Stupid. My muscles were screaming at me to stop, and the blood was pounding in my ears, and I knew that if I didn't take a break, I'd topple over very soon. I stopped and sagged against a tree, grabbing onto it to keep from falling. I held my breath and listened. Nothing. All I could hear was the rustling of the trees and the rain falling on the leaves. Did I make it? Had I escaped, Boss? Exhaling slowly, I bent down. Thankfully, I had brought my shoes. I'd tied them together and slung them around my neck when I was sneaking downstairs in the inn. At least I could protect my feet while I wandered around aimlessly in this forsaken forest. This was such a poor plan. Could it even be called a plan? I'd only thought so far as to escape, to get away from Boss. What came after, I hadn't given 1 ounce of thought. Stupid, really. But here I was in the middle of nowhere, not knowing which direction I was going in. Drenched from the rain and shivering so hard from the cold, it felt like my bones would break. With stiff, icy fingers, I managed to put my new socks on and my shoes. Even though they were soaked, my sore, scratched feet felt like heaven in my new socks. I stood up and looked around. Not having a single clue where I was, I realized it didn't matter as long as I started walking. I'd find out soon enough if I would make it out of the forest alive. Rubbing my hands up and down my arms, I braced the cold and started putting one foot in front of the other. Chapter 6. The Fat Pig Inn. The sign above the door read. I pushed on the door gingerly, shivering like a leaf in the wind. It didn't budge. Oh no. Whatever strength I had left all but drained from my body like rain into the ground. Was the inn closed? Or maybe abandoned? I looked around in the rain. The rain soaked me and every bone in my body ached. This was the first house I had seen since I escaped Boss. If I had indeed escaped him. Shivers ran down my spine continuously, giving me goosebumps from the cold and the rain, or maybe it was the thought of Boss I didn't know. I was tired. So tired. Tears threatened to overwhelm me, and I banged on the door again as hard as I could, using the last ounce of strength left in me. Please open. Nothing happened. I wilted against the door frame and leaned on the door. The rain was still coming in heavy bursts, like it was driven by an angry god with a grudge. I guess this was it. I had no strength to move, so I resorted to staying put until I would either succumb to the rain and cold or find the strength to go somewhere else. The latter was looking more and more unlikely. Suddenly the door disappeared behind me and I fell, my arms cartwheeling to keep my balance. Strong arms caught me. When I looked up, I was staring straight into Ratchet's face. He looked down at me with a surprised but gentle smile and righted me. So, you left after all? He asked while peeking out the door and checking that I was alone. I did, at least I think so, I mumbled, trying to keep my teeth from clattering and my shivering to a minimum. Well, don't just stand there, let the poor woman in. She must be freezing in this weather. Honestly, where are your manners, Ratchet? The voice was determined but kind and somehow familiar. Had I heard it before somewhere? Ratchet let me go and moved instantly to let me in. He peeked outside one last time, then slammed the door and turned towards me. The inn radiated a gentle warmth. Solid wood everywhere and beautiful quilts on the walls. Behind the bar was Meesa. I blinked and rubbed my eyes. She was still there when I looked up again. The cold must have really gotten to me. I rubbed my eyes again, but she was still there. Wait, I stammered and turned from Meesa to Ratchet and back again. You two know each other? I stammered through clattering teeth. Yeah, Ratchet closed the door and approached. You might be due an explanation. Meesa, if you would be so kind. Meesa rounded the bar and took my hands. I'll explain, all right, but first things first, let's get Payne a dry set of clothes and a solid meal. A solid meal. The thought of it made me drool involuntarily. I quickly wiped it away with a soaked sleeve, leaving my face even more wet. Great! Meesa led me upstairs to a room at the end of the hall. We passed several other rooms. This inn could clearly accommodate quite a few guests. Meesa pulled out a huge key from her apron and opened the door to the room at the end of the hall. The room was so clean and comfy. The bed had fluffed pillows, and a small wash basin sat atop a chest of drawers filled with hot, steaming water. A mirror with a gorgeous frame was hanging behind the basin, and there was a cute rug covering the floor. In the corner was the best part, though, a comfy chair covered in a big blanket and a small oil lamp next to it. A perfect spot for knitting. I hope this will be okay, Meesa said. Okay, I murmured. It's perfect. It's more than anyone could ask for. I managed to smile. But why are you showing this to me? I can't afford this. My confusion clearly showed on my face, along with apprehension. Because this is your room now, Payne, Meesa smiled. Look, I'll explain soon enough. First, get yourself washed up. You'll find clean clothes in the drawers, and the water in the basin should still be warm. She gave me a gentle push. Come back downstairs when you're done, and we'll talk. Meesa turned and started walking down the hall. Oh, I almost forgot. You're going to need this. She turned and tossed me the room key. I went back into the room, not sure what to make of the whole situation. My gut feeling was good, though, and my mum had taught me that those did matter. That listening to myself could never be wrong. Looking in the drawer confirmed my gut feeling. Neatly folded and ready for use were a pair of pants and a nice loose shirt. No more dresses. A tear rolled down my cheek and I set to work getting myself cleaned up and looking respectable. After a wonderful warm bath, I headed downstairs looking for the promised hot meal and some answers from Meesa. I had a little coin so I could at least pay for my dinner and drink, and boy did I need both. I had no idea how long I'd been running through the forest, but I was famished. I settled onto one of the high chairs at the bar and waited. I was alone in the main room. My gaze swept around the inn. It was completely different from Boss's inn. It was comfy and warm and didn't smell like stale mead and sweaty patrons. Hopping off my seat, I went to the wall to admire the quilts once more. They were intricate. The detailing must have taken a long time to complete. The way the colours swirled in abstract patterns was almost hypnotizing. You could look at the quilt from different angles, and it would give you a different perspective on the pattern. Wow. Whoever had done this was truly an artisan. You like them? Meesa inquired, coming up behind me. They're exquisite, I whispered, still in awe at the craftsmanship. They're made by my mother. She ran a hand down the quilt and sighed. Sadly, she passed away some suns ago, but a part of her lives in these quilts and looking at them always makes me smile. She was a true artisan, I offered, and smiled at Meesa. Yes, she was. Anyway, Payne, let's get you that meal. Meesa nudged me towards the bar where a plate was proudly displaying a heaping pile of potatoes, gravy, and succulent meat. I almost tripped myself up running to the bar. Stopping short, I marvelled at the plate. Is this all for me, Meesa? I figured I'd ask before I polished the plate off completely. Yeah, dig in, Payne. Meesa came round the other side of the bar and I dug into the meal like a hungry pig. Halfway through, I realised with horror that I hadn't paid for the meal yet. I quickly dug into my pocket and pulled out a silver coin. Offering it to Meesa, she laughed and swatted it away. Payne, keep your coin. Your meals and room are free from now on, if you choose to work here. I promise I'm a better boss than Boss, she laughed, and I heard Ratchet chuckling as he approached the bar. He dropped down, taking the high chair next to me, and Meesa served him up a similar meal. You remind me of my daughter, Ratchet started. My eyes darted to Meesa. Oh, hells no, Payne. He's not my father. That would never work out. He is my uncle, though, and one that I cherish very much. She grinned and nudged Ratchet to continue. Remember, I told you I wasn't the father I should have been. He turned to face me. I nodded, trying to keep my smacking to a minimum. Okay, well, at the inn, you reminded me so much of my daughter. It was heartbreaking seeing you worn out. You dropped your knitting when you almost fell, and that was the moment I knew who you were. I wanted to whisk you away myself, but I also know what Boss is like, and it would not have ended well if I had tried to sneak you off in a full inn. Also, I wasn't sure that you would leave at the behest of an old man, so I sent in Meesa. She can be very persuasive. Ratchet winked, and I stared at him in disbelief. He had actually cared about my well-being when he had told me to get out of the inn, and so had Meesa. It had been a long time since anyone had cared about me. Also, what did Ratchet mean by who I was? He knew something, I was sure. I swallowed the last piece of potato still lingering in my mouth and tried to find the appropriate words for the situation. What Meesa and Ratchet had done was humbling. Also, Ratchet continued, the resemblance is striking and I'm pretty sure I knew your mother. You what? I blurted, accidentally knocking my plate with my elbow as I twisted to the side to face him. The plate went flying, but I barely registered it. Tears welled in my eyes and my heart started pounding. Maybe something had happened to her? Oh no. You said you knew her. Is she okay? Where is she? How do I find her? I cried out loudly, my voice shrieking. Please, anything you can tell me. Easy, Payne. I'm sure she's fine. At least last I heard of her. That was a while ago, though, and I lost track of her. Right now, I don't know where she is. We can figure that out, okay? Ratchet was radiating calmness and covered my hand with his own. So huge was it that my small hand disappeared underneath it completely. Hope blossomed in my heart, like a spring morning, and I smiled. Yeah, we can figure it out. She's alive, that's what's important. Suddenly I had so many questions for Ratchet, but I turned towards Meesa. I'm sorry about the plate, I said meekly. Ah, never mind, she beamed at me, clearly happy on my behalf that there was hope I could find my mum. I slid off my high chair and started picking up the pieces of the plate. It was all over the floor. A little overwhelmed and embarrassed, I looked up at Meesa. I'd like to work here if that's okay. We would love to have you, but only until you have saved up enough money to do what you want to do with your life. What do you want from life, Payne? Meesa's eyes bore into me, laying bare my very soul and my desires. I had never said it out loud before, but I kept Meesa's gaze locked on mine. Heart pounding faster and faster, I said, I want my own yarn store, more than anything. I want to create a haven for knitters and creatives, and I want to inspire people to knit. Hearing the words out loud for the first time confirmed how much I really wanted it. It felt so right to stand by my desire. Well, I'm not much of a knitter, Payne, but I'm sure you could teach me. Meesa winked. I felt some kind of calm settle in my stomach. This was good. My mum was alive, and I would work towards fulfilling my dream. What could possibly go wrong? As soon as that thought left my head, everything went to hell again. The door flew open, almost kicked off the hinges. Boss was in the entryway, looking like a monster hungry for blood. You. He pointed a fat finger at Meesa. You took my property, the words sending a jolt of nervous energy through my body. I rose slowly. Boss crossed the floor. Payne is not your property anymore, boss, Meesa stated matter-of-factly, and stepped up in front of me from behind the bar. Ratchet was flanking her with a couple from his crew. When did they come in? I hadn't noticed them entering, but thankfully here they were, including the big one. Payne, I think his name was? He was big and not to be messed with. Boss drew back a little and settled by the door, fury emanating off him like a screaming boiling kettle. Payne works for me now. You know the rules of land. She's no longer in Millstone. Once she crossed the border to Silver Forest, you lost your claim on her. She belongs to me to do with as I please, he snarled. Her mum's and her own stupidity mean she owes me. Boss spat, increasingly agitated. She's coming with me. He quickly made to cross the floor again and reached out to grab me. I closed my eyes and reached for Meesa's hand instinctively. That will not do you any good, Payne. My internal dialogue sprang up, but I pushed it back down. Noise exploded in my ears, but I kept my eyes closed. Surely he couldn't grab me with my eyes closed, because that would mean I was invisible, right? When I opened them, Boss was gone, and the inn was a mess. I ran to the door just in time to see Ratchet and Payne hauling a struggling Boss away, his face bleeding and his clothes torn. They had fought, and Boss had clearly lost. I started shivering uncontrollably and grabbed the doorway until they subsided. He was gone, Boss was finally gone, and I had found new friends who would help me fulfill my dream. Speaking of dreams, I pinched myself hard. Ouch! Payne, what on earth are you doing? Meesa's calm voice rang out behind me. Sorry, I just wanted to see if I was dreaming. I turned with a huge grin on my face, showing her the red mark on my arm. I'm not dreaming, I cried joyfully and then ran to hug Meesa. Chapter 7. Summer had come, and 6 moons later, I was awkwardly walking and half stumbling on the gravel path, with Meesa leading me by the hand. She had insisted on blindfolding me. Apparently, she deemed it necessary for me to walk from the fat pig and all the way to where we were going, which felt very far away, without my ability to see. Meesa, can't you just tell me where we're going? I huffed as I stumbled yet again, my left arm doing cartwheels to keep the balance, and my right gripping firmly onto Meesa. You promised you'd lead me around the potholes, I cried, righting myself. Oops! Sorry, Payne. Meesa laughed, but I promise we're almost there, just a little further. Her voice was light and happy, so I figured we were probably going somewhere nice. Still, it was nerve-wracking leaving my well-being in Meesa's hands. I trusted her, though. She really had helped me and protected me, and, on top of everything, she had become a cherished friend. I could not imagine my life without her at this point. My feet hit something hard. Ouch! I yammered. Sorry, Payne. You need to take a step up and then place your hand here. Meesa put my hand on a round wooden something, a doorknob. I felt around it with my hand, still blindfolded, but yes, it was definitely a doorknob. Why would Meesa give me a doorknob? I wondered. All right, Payne. I wasn't sure about this until recently, so I didn't want to spring the surprise before now, but here, it's yours. She undid the blindfold. It took a few seconds for my eyes to adjust to the bright sunlight, and I shielded my face with the other hand. Come on, you big doofy, look! Meesa cried and removed the blindfold completely. I stood in front of a door to a small, cute, rustic wooden cottage. One big window faced the path outside, and below the window little flowers were peeking out and enjoying the sun. Meesa, is this? I started, tears swelling in my eyes. Yeah, Payne, I got you a yarn store. You kept rambling on about how you've always dreamt of having your own store, and although I love working with you, I'm pretty sure you're not meant to be a waitress your whole life, so I got you this. Remember? I told you I only wanted you to work for me until you could realize your dream. Well, this is it. You can spend the coin you've saved up on yarn and needles and whatever else a store like that needs to get started. Meesa winked, and my heart instantly swelled and tears pricked my eyes. The sign above the door was empty, but I had the perfect name picked out. I would work hard to ensure In Stitches became the go-to place for yarn. I opened the door, my hands shaking, and stepped through it, taking the first step to realizing my biggest dream. My goal was to make my store a place where people could relax and find inspiration for their next project, and this place was perfect. I could already see in my mind where the counter would go and how it would be surrounded by basket after basket of yarn, and how I would neatly organize yarn on homemade wooden shelves lining the sidewalls. I wanted to honor my mum by spreading our passion for knitting, and I couldn't wait to get started. Maybe she would one day find this store and I would have her back in my life. One could only hope. I wiped a tear away and turned in the doorway to face my best friend. Meesa, I beamed, this is a dream come true. It really is. I'm glad you like it, Payne. I wasn't sure if you thought it was maybe a bit too far out of the village. No, it's great. It's perfect, in fact. I pulled Meesa in for a hug, and finally let my shoulders drop, tears trickling down my cheeks freely. I made no attempt to stop them, as I fully realized that I would be okay. Little did I know that my life would soon be turned upside down and I would be in the fight of my life. Hi. If you like this shortish story, please leave a review. This is my very first venture into the realm of storytelling, but more is on the way, and if you sign up for my newsletter on www.caffeinatedfiction.com. I won't spam you, I promise. Heck, I'm a mother of a 6-month-old baby. I barely have time to go to the bathroom. You'll be the first one to know when the novel releases, and Payne's adventures continue later this year. Table of Contents. Title page. Contents. Introduction. Chapter 1. Chapter 2. Chapter 3. Chapter 4. Chapter 5. Chapter 6. Chapter 7. Guide. Contents.